Welcome back, campers.
That was your host, Caitlin.
And that was your host, Genevieve.
And you have arrived at episode 85 of Camping is Cancelled. 85. Damn, let's give ourselves a little round of applause for that one before we dive into this horrible story.
Ugh.
On the Friday morning of February 5th, 2005, 26-year-old Carrie Rawson had taken the day off from her job as a substitute teacher. It had been snowing and the roads were icy, and Carrie hated driving in those conditions, so she'd called in and was enjoying her morning at home, cozied up in the fleece pajamas her parents had given her for Christmas. A little after 12 p.m., Carrie glanced out of the large front window of the apartment she shared in Michigan with her husband Darian. An old, beat-up car that she'd never seen before was parked right next to their building's dumpster, and Carrie could have sworn that the man sitting behind the wheel was staring directly into their window. Alarm bells buzzed in her stomach, and all the warnings her father had instilled in her about stranger danger raced through her mind. He had been a security system installer for a while, so he knew his stuff. Carrie had no idea that in just a few minutes, her entire life would be turned inside out. There would be a knock at the door, and an undercover FBI officer would flash his badge and quietly ask to step inside her home. Did she know about the BTK Killer in her hometown of Wichita? He would ask. Memories would resurface for Carrie of news stories on their TV, and the night terror she'd had as a little girl after a woman on their street was brutally murdered. Yes, she definitely had heard of him. She'd been terrified of him. But whenever a nightmare sent her flying into her parents' room, her dad would always reassure her that she was safe. Carrie's brain would struggle to process the next words that came out of the young officer's mouth. That her dad, her protector, and the man she had always called her best friend, the same man who had just held her tight in a bear hug at Christmas and told her he loved her, was that one and the same BTK. For over 30 years, Dennis Rader would somehow manage to split his world into two halves. One was defined by being a respected elder in his church, a Cub Scout leader, a devoted husband and father, and a lover of gardening and family camping trips. But the other half can best be summed up by 4 round indents pressed deep into the carpeted floor of a crime scene that would forever haunt the dreams of some of the most jaded homicide officers in Wichita. These indents were found next to the body of a murder victim, a boy. He had been bound and left to slowly suffocate from a plastic bag cinched tightly around his head. And if that wasn't awful enough, officers realized that the 4 indents in the carpet had been made from a chair that the killer had brought into the room and placed right next to the victim so that he could sit and calmly watch the boy struggle for his life.
Beginning in 1974, a series of 10 brutal murders and an infuriating game of cat and mouse between law enforcement and a killer who unfortunately coined himself BTK would haunt Wichita for 2 decades. And then, in 1991, the killings abruptly stopped. And for the next 14 years, whoever had been terrorizing the city kept a profile so low he was never even suspected for a murder that he'd committed on his very own street. He got to walk his daughter down the aisle and proudly watched his son swear into the U.S. military. He was named as the head of his church's congregation. He even allowed himself to begin carefully planning out his next attack. But little did he know that hours away in the FBI office at Quantico, criminal profiling legend John Douglas would become so obsessed with understanding BTK's pathology that John would find himself sitting in a graveyard at midnight, poring over crime scene photos with a flashlight. Actually, John was sitting by a grave that was supposed to be his own. But he'd refuse to let himself die while monsters like BTK walked free. Dennis also didn't know that just a few miles away, a stubborn detective named Kenny Landwehr was tucking his own young son into bed, then staying awake long into the night to pore over page after page of the very same BTK case files he had witnessed his colleagues spiral into the depths of despair and drinking over. Kenny could not stand that with every year that passed, these BTK murders were fading further and further back in the lineup of unsolved homicides, and some sick son of a bitch was sleeping easy, believing he had gotten away with it. So Kenny had decided that even if it killed him, his team was going to be the one to catch BTK once and for all. BTK also didn't know that he was raising a daughter who possessed an incredible strength and empathy that he himself could never know, and that she would be his ultimate downfall. This is part 1 of our deep dive into the life, the twisted mind, and the hunt for Dennis Rader, the bind, torture, kill, killer. It's going to get rough at parts, but this is one of those true crime stories where, in the end, the bad guy does lose. So, the least we can do is tell you how it happened. Lights out, campers.
Oh man, the mountains call my number one. I'm just a life-size lottery ticket in the hand of the one.
In January 1974, the Otero family had only been living in their new house on Murdoch Avenue in Wichita for 10 weeks, and they were still surrounded by packing boxes. Their dad was 38-year-old Joe Otero. He was born in Puerto Rico and raised in Harlem, New York. Joe married his childhood sweetheart, Julie, and after spending 20 years in the U.S. Air Force as a master sergeant, he retired. The Oteros now found themselves moving to Wichita so that Joe could continue working on planes, which he loved, and teach flying at Cook Field. It was a badass, I'm just gonna say. Julie Otero was 34 years old and was a loving and hardworking mom to their 5 kids: 9-year-old Joey, 11-year-old Josie, 13-year-old Carmen, 14-year-old Danny, and 15-year-old Charlie. Everyone knew Julie as the kind of person who always had a seat at her table open for other neighborhood kids, even if it was Christmas dinner. The oldest Otero boy, Charlie, loved surfing and motorcycles, and Danny was really into sports. The 2 sisters, Carmen and Josie, loved school, and Josie in particular loved poetry and drawing. And this is my favorite, Caitlin. Joey's greatest love at the tender age of 9 were the girls in his class.
So, our nephew.
Yes. And apparently that feeling was mutual because they all thought he was a cutie. And he absolutely was. Both Joe and Julie were very into jiu-jitsu and were even teaching it to the kids. The Otero family missed the warmth and the beaches living in Puerto Rico, but they were still in good spirits. They enjoyed watching movies and playing games together to get through the freezing Wichita winter. Crime was so low in their neighborhood that many people would just leave their car keys in the ignition overnight. The Oteros were far too streetwise to do this. I would say they had far too much common sense to do this.
I don't even understand.
Yeah, but the Oteros still liked that this was Wichita's vibe. On this day, it was a Tuesday at 8:20 a.m., and the Oteros' morning routine was in full swing. Julie laid out cereal bowls and started packing school lunches. 11-year-old Josie put on her glasses, and 9-year-old Joey put on one of his favorite outfits. This is iconic. A yellow t-shirt with dinosaur print and long purple pants with white back pockets and white stripes down the legs. I'm sure he walked in and all those girls were like, oh. Can I share
Daddy.
Can I share your juice box?
Yeah.
Joey and Josie hurried through breakfast so they could play with their German Shepherd Lucky before school. Lucky was a former military dog that the family had brought from Puerto Rico, and he didn't have much time for strangers, but he loved his family. Usually on a school morning, Joe would drop off the oldest 3 Otero children on his way to work. Then Julie would take her station wagon a few minutes later to drop off Josie and Joey at their elementary school. But this particular morning, Joe was home. He'd been in a car accident just a few days before and had hurt his ribs and shoulder, so they were down to just the station wagon, and he had taken off work a few days to recover. He still wanted to help out Josie, though, so he took her car and drove the older kids to school, then came home so she could leave with the other two on time. Joe sat down at the kitchen table to eat one of his favorite snacks, tinned pears straight from the can, while Julie and Josie stood at the counter making sandwiches. Joe asked 9-year-old Joey to take the trash out, and with Lucky by his side, Joey swung open the back door, trash bag in hand, and found himself staring down the barrel of a revolver.
Just a few weeks before, 28-year-old Dennis Rader had just begun a new and pretty intense chapter of his life. His wife Paula had given birth to their first baby, a little boy named Brian. The newborn phase was sweet, but very stressful and unpredictable. Bitch, don't we know?
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Dennis liked it best when things were under control, especially if he was the one in control. Again, don't we all?
Yeah.
I mean...
Also, those Oteros had 5 damn kids back to back to back. I mean, it literally was like 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. That's
like
impressive.
Those TikToks of moms writing down all the years I was pregnant in, and it's literally like 10 straight years.
But you know what?
Good for
If
you.
that's how you're going to have a big family, that's the way to do it. Because they're all growing up together.
I guess so, yeah.
I don't know.
Anywho.
Yep. 3 is my cutoff.
2. On a freezing winter morning, shortly after Brian was born, Dennis had offered to drive his wife around to run errands so she wouldn't have to brave the icy roads. The Raiders lived in the city of Park Circle, just next to Wichita, and their drive took them by a house on the corner of Murdoch Avenue. When the car rolled past, Dennis saw the dark hair and eyes of Julie Otero and 11-year-old Josie as their station wagon backed into the garage. Any normal person could have been struck by Julie's natural beauty and Josie's adorable glasses and large brown eyes. But Paula had no clue just how far from normal Dennis truly was. In that split second, months of dark fantasies bloomed into an actual plan, and he knew who his target would be. So, let's talk about Dennis.
Yay. I feel like that's where you like... Oh, what is it where you like pop a popper and like confetti goes out, but it's not confetti, it's just something fucked up. Yeah, just a deflated balloon.
This is where like the tone of the image just like changes.
Yeah, we gotta talk about Dennis.
This is the part of the episode where we have to talk about the piece of shit of the week, and it's Dennis Rader.
That's what we should have named this. The piece of shit of the week.
Oh my gosh, guys.
Dang, missed opportunity.
Well, because it's not about them, it's about their victims.
You're absolutely right.
He's just a piece of shit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, guys. Unlike many serial killer origin stories, Dennis Rader's upbringing, by all accounts, was pretty damn wholesome.
Yeah, no one was stringing him up in a barn and upside down and beating him like Pee-wee Gaskins.
Pee-wee Gaskins.
Yeah, sorry.
If you haven't listened to our Pee-wee Gaskin story, please go back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that one's messed up.
Man, anywho. So yeah, wholesome childhood. Happy memories. Dennis's father, William, grew up in the small Ozark town of Rader, Missouri, founded by actual Rader family ancestors in the 1800s.
You know, we're actually not that far from Rader, Missouri.
Is that down in the Ozarks? So like 4 hours? I don't want to go.
You don't?
No.
You don't want to go there with a Ouija board and try to talk to some old Raiders?
Fuck no. No.
All right.
In 1943, William joined the Marines and married his high school sweetheart, Dorothea. William repaired B-25 bombers and worked as a cook during World War II. And on one of his shore leave trips, Dorothea became pregnant with Dennis. She became pregnant while he was gone? Or she was pregnant.
No, so on one of his shore leave trips, so shore leave is like, they took a break. They called it shore leave.
Oh, he's Marines. Okay,
Mhm.
I get it. I get
so
it.
he gets to, come on shore.
Hopefully everybody else got that.
No, you're good. And while he was on that leave, he got her pregnant.
I don't need the full breakdown. I know how
Okay,
a baby is made.
you would appreciate that when I was researching this case and my algorithm was like affected because of it, I somehow got this weirdly wholesome Instagram montage that was like notes from during this time of men who were like requesting shore leave. And there was one of this man that requested to be on shore leave during World War II because his reasoning was, my wife sent me a letter and said she's planning to get pregnant between this state and this state, and I would really like to be there when it happens. Which is great. And he got leave granted.
Good for him.
Yeah. And so she was like, you better get your ass home and put a
She's
baby
like,
in
one
me.
way or another, I'm getting pregnant.
Yeah. And he was like, I would like to be there when it happens.
Okay.
Oh. Anyways.
Anywho, so Dorothea became pregnant with the first of 4 Rader boys. When the boys were young, William got a job at an electric plant and the family moved to a sturdy middle-class bungalow in Wichita. Dennis grew up walking to school with his brothers and sharing a room with bunk beds. He loved making up stories about cowboys and Indians, and the brothers spent a lot of their time outdoors together, fishing and camping near Little Arkansas River. The Rader family were devout Lutherans and went to church every Sunday. In school, Dennis was perfectly average. It's kind of an insult. I'm going to read it as an insult.
Perfectly average. He didn't stand out
Yeah.
one way or the other. Yeah.
But he did love being involved with the Boy Scouts and especially enjoyed learning how to tie all sorts of knots. And not like fishing knots.
Yeah. Put a pin in that.
This and the wholesome stories of their boyish mishaps was all that the girl Dennis met at a church dance named Paula ever heard about his childhood. He, of course, left out that when he was around 9, his mom had been sitting on the couch watching TV when her wedding ring somehow got caught in one of the springs and she couldn't get it free. Being trapped like this made her extremely anxious, and she was visibly panicked when Dennis came in from playing and found her. Let's just say he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
When he was in grade school, there was a young actress on the Mickey Mouse Club show that the boys in his class would talk about. They all wanted to kiss her on the cheek and hold her hand. Dennis obsessively fantasized about tying her up and squeezing her throat.
Oh, God. Okay, I do want to mention
no.
here really quickly because, obviously these are things he's not telling his sweet little wife that he's met at the church dance. That in all of the reading that I had to do about Dennis Rader, unfortunately, there's really not that much that we know about his childhood. Some serial killers we know like intense hyper details.
Right.
With him, it's a little bit hazy because it's kind of a cobbling of what he has said, which psychoanalysts have had to comb through to like determine what's truth and what's a lie, and what his family has been willing to share. But a lot of experts really believe that there had to be, and they all want to attribute it to this, but there was one kind of like really triggering event that stuck in his mind that kind of like pushed that deviant sexuality forward. And a lot of people like to say it was the ring in the couch, which makes sense. But there was something I read about him and his childhood that makes more sense to me in combination with this. And it was that, like a lot of parents during this time, his dad and his mom, they were good in the sense that they weren't abusive, like raging alcoholics, but his mom, his mom was very like hands off, that she just kind of liked being in the house. She'd do her housework and then sit and watch TV.
Like
she
open the door, come home when the street light comes on.
Yeah, like she wasn't really interested in being invested in what they were doing, and that bothered Dennis, that he never really felt like she was present for him. And so I have to believe that there's something there with that. And then suddenly him being the one in the room with her when she cannot go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm have this feeling of like being the one in control of this situation. I always want your attention and your validation. You don't give it to me. And now I hold the cards.
And that all makes sense, but it's the then jumping to the actor on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and then Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Club show. Sorry guys.
Oh,
I'm in this era.
Yeah.
And immediately fantasizing about choking her.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Like, we're going past tying and, like, having control to abusing.
Right. And it's never one thing. It's always that perfect storm of things. And then the next thing you're going to tell us, I think, is contributing to that, where we'll see how he got where he got.
I don't like this sentence.
Yeah.
So, I don't like this whole story, but...
Sorry.
I'm just going to say it. It also didn't help that he started collecting and obsessing over 1950s bondage pornography, or experimented with torturing and strangling dogs and cats.
Do you know, Caitlin, that I found one of these magazines in an antique shop not that long ago? And I'm kicking myself now a little bit that I didn't buy it, but also I would feel really grossed out because I would never want one of my kids to accidentally find it. But remember way back when, this was like a long time ago, where I very stupidly and like naively made a comment about they didn't have porn prior to, and it was something like 50 years ago. Bitch, no, there has been hardcore porn since the beginning of time in all different types of forms. And this is the definition of like, so you know those cutesy like pinup girl illustrations that we've seen with like the Marilyn Monroe-y, you know, Jackie Kennedy, like busty women. But this is pornography, just illustrations. So drawn. And then it's women that have that 1950s kind of like buxom, voluptuous, sexy look, but they are in situations of bondage and like gagged, you know, restrained, hogtied. It is very dark and it's very extreme for a child to the
appropriate community that looks at it in a respectful, safe way. That's complete. But a child, no.
And I'm going to throw out on a limb that in the 1950s, with how just horribly sexist the world in and of itself was, that even the production of this, there had to be a level of non-consensuality and like derogatoriness towards women even then that we've gotten better at now. But just from the brief flip through I did, I was like, oh, like I felt grossed out. And then imagining a child in the 1950s, when you think about how innocent all of the content was, being exposed to this at a formative age, like, who gave that to him? Like, how did he get a hold of that? That's what I want to know. Like, how did he get a hold of that?
Children are sneaky, Jen. I don't think time has changed that.
I know.
You know, they weasel their way, you know?
Yeah, they do.
A kid had time to strangle cats and dogs.
You
know?
He was definitely, like most kids at the time, just kind of free range and neglected. But most kids at the time were not torturing animals. So
your husband, feral.
Your husband, feral.
And they turned into well-adjusted members of society.
Yes, they really did.
And I mean, if anything comes out, we will do an episode about them if they show their ass one day.
I will say my husband once dug a trench in like 3 feet of snow from the farmhouse to the barn because I knew there was a new litter of kittens out there. Aww. And I was like, oh my God, like they can't just be out in the chicken house. They're going to freeze. I'm going to bring them inside. And he did. And they were safe for the night.
You know, neither of our husbands have ever harmed an animal.
No.
Because that's a hell no. That's like not even a red flag. That's just a bring back public execution.
Yeah.
Anywho, guys.
Anywho,
Sorry.
we gotta anxiously talk our way through the horribleness of this,
Yes.
but as you can see, Dennis is not headed down a good path.
Yes. So, in 1963, he graduated from Wichita Heights High School. At 21, he joined the U.S. Air Force, probably to avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War. Just an assumption.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it would make sense. He has control. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
And while in the Air Force, he developed a new hobby, peeking through window blinds to watch women undress, and then breaking into their homes to steal their undergarments.
Escalation station.
We gone.
This is so classic serial killer. Like everything you ever expect, aside from the, violent, like sexual or physical abuse in his childhood.
But still neglect from his
Yeah.
mother and his point of view. So
Yeah.
boxes are being checked.
Yeah. And if you want to, like, I really think that the exposure to that level of intense, dark sexuality would have the same effect on your brain as, like,
Oh, yeah.
as maybe not the same. I don't want to paint it all with the same brush, but like you could see how it would have a similar effect as being sexually abused.
Yeah.
Because your brain is being trained
You're
to
questioning everything. You're like, what am I doing wrong? Why
Yeah.
why is this like blah
Yeah.
blah blah?
And you're feeling isolated, or he's feeling isolated because he doesn't respond the same to normal stimuli as like, oh, like there's a pretty girl, I want to kiss her, I want to hold her hand, and he's like,
stimulate.
no, like I want to see the life go out of her eyes. That's ooh. And there's no one to see it and to be like, hey, let's get you some help there,
Yeah.
buddy.
Gosh. Oy. Less than a year following his return to Wichita from the service, in 1971, Dennis met and married a lovely young woman at the church social named Paula Dietz, and they would both say it was love at first sight. Their wedding photos were very sweet, and they can both be seen smiling and laughing while they fed each other cake. In July 1973, he started working for Cessna, and in the fall of 1973, he began working toward a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I can't say that with a straight face. At Wichita State University. There's more where that came from, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
gosh.
ding,
yeah.
ding, ding. Also, again, that interest in law enforcement.
Well, hell, in the beginning, the little nugget about how he worked in home security
Oh,
installment.
yes. We will get into
fun.
that later. Yes.
Oh,
There's
Lord.
a whole many layers to Dennis. But remember, Ted Bundy also was big into that.
Yep.
Ed Kemper was a frickin' buddy. He tried to be a police officer, but he was too damn tall. And then they were his drinking buddies, and he would get case information.
Oh.
He was helping them solve his own serial killings.
I mean,
Yeah. Anyways, with the steady ramping up of Dennis's deviant behavior over the years, and we haven't even gotten into all of it fully, we will, but you've probably guessed where it eventually finds him. Creeping around the back of the Otero family house in the early hours of January 15th, cutting their phone line with a large hunting knife. He had been watching the Oteros for weeks, ever since that moment when he saw Josie and Julie pulling into the driveway. He was memorizing their routine and intensely fantasizing about having total control of their family, and especially 11-year-old Josie. When the back door swung open, remember little Joey taking out the trash, Dennis pointed the gun at Joey and told him this was a stick-up. By now, Lucky was hysterically barking, and Dennis had not expected him to be loose in the house, and this made anxious sweat start to pour off of him. He got a second surge of panic when the father, Joe, rose up from the table. He thought Joe would be at work, because remember, he'd been memorizing their routine. Dennis was a good 7 inches taller than Joe and had a gun, but Joe was a former champion boxer, so he was still pretty intimidating. And this was the moment where his entire plan very nearly fell apart. And this, Caitlin, is where I think that if he had been really stood up to, or if like Lucky had attacked him, something in me believes that he never would have tried this type of crime again. I know I could be wrong, and like you can't go back and say what if, but this is such a critical moment where he started to panic because the fantasy that he'd had and that control he'd been
gone.
Yes, immediately from the start. But what the following events show you is that for him, that drive to do what he goes on to do was more powerful than just that. Like, he knew that fantasizing wasn't going to be enough, which is, again, that classic pattern of escalation. It is never enough. It will always escalate. So Dennis, as much as he could, got his shit together, didn't run away, didn't say, oh, never mind, wrong house.
My bad.
Yep. Joe asked Dennis if this was a fucking joke that his brother-in-law had set up, because I guess they would do practical jokes with each other, maybe not to this extreme, but he's like, this has to be a joke. Like, I don't understand what's happening. But Dennis firmly pushed Joey back into the kitchen and said, no, this was not a joke. He calmly told the family that his .22 was loaded and that he would use it if they didn't do exactly what he said. But they didn't need to worry. He told them he was only looking for money, food, and a car to get him to California. And once he found what he needed, he would leave them alone. He ordered them to put the dog outside and for everyone to lie face down on the floor of the living room. He pulled out wads of thin white nylon cord from a black duffel bag and reassured the Oteros that he was just tying them up as a precaution. As we're sure you figured out already, this was a lie. 2 hours later, the back door of the Otero's home opened, and Dennis Rader emerged alone. He pulled the hood of his parka over his head and slid into the Otero's station wagon. He kept his shoulders hunched and the parka pulled as far down over his face as possible while he drove to the parking lot of Dylan's grocery store, where he'd left his own white Impala early that morning. Before he got out of the station wagon, he pulled the seat forward to disguise his height and climbed inside his own car so that he could take inventory of the massive air quotes gear. I'm saying that because that's what he called it, but fuck you, Dennis, gear in his duffel bag. In a surge of panic, Dennis then realized he had left behind the hunting knife at the Otero's, and he still had evidence to get rid of before his wife came home. Dennis sped back to Murdoch Avenue, pulled into the Otero's garage, slipped in through the back door, and grabbed the knife. By now, his head was splitting, so he took a couple of the Otero's Tylenols before driving to a patch of woods along the Little Arkansas River. He built a small fire and burned the sketches he'd made of the Otero's, along with his leftover ropes and bindings. He felt sad that the rush of the attack was over, but he was already enjoying his new fantasy, that the Otero's had become his slaves in the afterlife. I just want to mention here that I don't believe Dennis Rader has ever had an original fucking thought regarding being a serial killer, and this little comment, which is what he later would tell law enforcement, that he was fantasizing about them being his slaves in the afterlife, this is something that the Zodiac Killer wrote in one of his letters just, it wasn't even 5 years before, when they were doing their killing spree. So Dennis, I think, was just saying something to align himself with the, the repertoire of the Zodiac. Whether or not he actually did this, I don't fucking know, but just need to throw that out there because he's pathetic. That was not an original thought. Then, when Paula did come home, Dennis was acting perfectly normal, and the Raiders and their baby enjoyed an afternoon together as a family.
What's the movie Ben made us watch? The wolf movie? The wolves?
Oh, the movie where, was it Hunter x Hunter?
Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah.
I just need anybody, just watch this so you understand. I feel like the mom at the end, like when her brain just like is like snaps. I feel like that.
That is a horribly underrated, fantastic horror film.
Ooh.
But I completely agree. Yeah.
Back on Murdoch Avenue, no one driving by thought there was anything unusual about the large German Shepherd anxiously pacing back and forth along the backyard fence of the Otero's house. But that was the first thing Charlie noticed when he, Danny, and Carmen arrived home around 3:30 p.m. Lucky was always in the house unless someone was outside with him. He noticed the station wagon was gone, and when he opened the kitchen door, he could see his mom's purse had been flipped over and its contents spilled on the floor. She and their home were extremely neat and tidy, and she would have never left her purse like that. Charlie yelled out, "Is anybody home?" There was no answer. At this point, Danny walked down the hall to his parents' bedroom and suddenly screamed at Charlie to come quick, because their mom and dad were playing a bad trick. Apparently, Joe was a big prankster with his kids, and this must have been the only way Danny's mind could make sense of what he was seeing.
Oh, poor babies.
In the master bedroom were the bodies of Julie and Joe. Julie was sprawled across the bed, barefoot and still wearing her powder blue housecoat. Her ankles and entire body had been tightly bound in loop after loop of elaborately knotted white nylon cord, but the worst were the extremely tight bindings around her throat. A bag was cinched around her head, and a gag was shoved deep into her mouth. Her nails were torn, and her face was swollen and covered in blood. Joe lay on the floor beside the bed, also bound and tied, with a plastic bag cinched tightly around his head with a leather belt. Bizarrely, he also had a pillow beneath his head. A frantic Charlie ran to find a kitchen knife and a pair of fingernail clippers. While his siblings wailed from the doorway, he used the knife to tear away the bags and bindings, and the fingernail clippers to carefully cut away the cord and the gag from his mother's throat and mouth. But it was clear that they were both gone.
That detail about the fingernail clipper is so heartbreakingly sweet, because it just shows that he was thinking about not wanting to hurt his mom.
Yeah, like being gentle.
Yeah. I hate it so much.
The cords around his father's hands had been pulled so tight that they had swollen to the size of baseball mitts. Charlie then ran to the kitchen phone to dial 911, only to find the line dead. He sprinted to their next-door neighbor's house, and thank God the man came running, even though he and the Oteros had not even met one another since they'd moved in. The man poked his head in the master bedroom, took one look, and tore back to his house to call 911. When the neighbor had first looked at the scene, he saw the butcher knife Charlie used to cut their bindings next to Joe's body and the blood on their faces, and assumed that Joe had killed Julie, then himself, which is what he told police.
I mean, it makes sense that you would think that. Also, thank God that the first adult he ran to
helped immediately.
Ugh.
Within 5 minutes, the streets in front of 803 North Edgemore was swarming with red and blue lights, expecting to investigate a murder-suicide. The ambulance crew had been the first to arrive on the scene, and a hysterical Charlie pulled on the paramedics' arms and begged them to hurry inside and help his parents. But all they could do was say they had been strictly ordered to wait for police.
Oh, fuck.
Ugh, I'm feeling nauseous.
I know. This is so horrible and traumatic.
At this point, Charlie still believed that Joey and Josie would be arriving home at any minute. So he sent Danny and Carmen off to intercept them on their walk home from the elementary school. In the Otero's bedroom, police noticed that their dresser drawers had all been yanked open and rifled through, and that the contents of Julie's purse had been scattered across their orange shag carpet down the hallway, like someone had been looking through it for money or car keys. Later, they would learn that the killer had stolen a pair of, fuck him, Josephine's underwear and taken Joe's wristwatch off his wrist because, according to him, he needed to replace the old one.
Oh my God. Police next found the body of 9-year-old Joey Otero, lying on his side on the floor of the bedroom that he shared with his brothers. He had been suffocated from a white t-shirt, a plastic bag, and a blue t-shirt wrapped tightly around his head. His ankles and wrists were bound together behind his back so tightly they were, like his dad's, swollen to several times their normal size. Oddly, there was a Wichita phone book on the floor next to his head. But most disturbing to police was the wooden chair that was just a few feet away from Joey's body. The bottom rung of the chair had snapped, and the splinters from it were sitting directly on top of the carpet, so they knew it had just happened. And this led them to believe that the killer had sat in the chair to watch Joey suffocate, possibly alone, but it was highly likely that he had forced another member of the family to sit on the chair with him, and their struggling likely snapped the chair rung. All we can hope is that the broken wood piece... Sorry. All we can sincerely hope and pray is that the broken wood piece shot directly into Dennis Rader's ball sack and causes him excruciating pain to this day and every day in the afterlife. Listen, Caitlin, the next time we have a sleepover, you know how we talked about making those, like, voodoo dolls?
Yeah.
Let's make one of Dennis.
Oh, and the fucker's still alive.
That motherfucker is still alive, and do not Google image his most recent photo unless you want a jump scare. That is all I will say right now. Do you remember when I said if AI, like, turned him... You know how now there's that thing where AI will turn your pet into a person?
I have not seen
Oh, because you deleted Instagram. Okay, there's now a trend where people are, like, posting a picture of their pet, and then what AI says my pet would look like as a person. Well, Dennis is the reverse of that. But
I was gonna say.
But remember in A Bug's Life when they have that one crazy evil cricket or grasshopper? No, not Hopper. The one that they keep on a leash that's like that one. That's what Dennis looks like right now. Sam, leave that in.
Leave it. Genevieve, why do we cover murders?
I don't know.
Murders, because I genuinely would gladly tear this man from a torn cuticle on his nail and skin him slowly from that.
I mean, honestly.
Poor babies. These poor people. Just
Yeah.
Go on.
I will continue. So, while the crime scene upstairs was being combed over, an officer made his way down to the basement. It was pitch black dark and silent, and the officer let his flashlight beam slowly drift across a pair of small black boots and a table covered with Joe's model airplanes. He spotted a door off to the side that opened into an even smaller, darker room where he could just make out the outline of a washer and dryer. He took a step inside and felt his shoulder bump into something solid that moved. He swung the flashlight beam upward and horror shot through him when he saw what he'd bumped into was the body of 11-year-old Josie Otero. We're sorry guys, this next bit is rough, but we need to go through it because it is important for understanding BTK's pathology. Josie was dangling from a pipe by a noose that was tied so tightly it had cut a ring deep into her neck. Cords of that same white nylon rope used on the other victims were wrapped and knotted around her wrists, her waist, knees, and ankles in a manner that was clearly overkill, so not necessary at all for restraining her, but in a way that law enforcement would later actually note, it was like his victims became props. like props in a
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. She had been gagged with a strip of towel that was absurdly tight, and one shoulder strap of her training bra appeared to have been sliced with a knife. She was wearing a blue t-shirt and crew socks, and her underwear was down around her ankles. And finally, the officer noticed a large amount of a white substance, later confirmed to be semen, present on Josie's right leg and pooled directly beneath her on the cement floor. Meanwhile, the rest of the Otero children had been taken to the police station, and Charlie would not stop asking where Joey and Josie were, because he wanted them brought straight to him and did not want them to have to go in the house to see their parents. A chaplain eventually broke the news to the siblings that Joey and Josie were also gone. Charlie would later share 2 intense feelings he had in this moment before his body went into shock for several days. One was the feeling of his chest being physically torn open because the pain he felt was so intense. The other was a memory from 2 days prior, when he'd watched the movie In Cold Blood about a family of 4 being murdered in Kansas, and it had terrified him so much that he built a tunnel of cardboard boxes across the basement as a family escape route to a window. He had told his dad about it, and Joe said, "Well, thank God, nothing like that has ever happened to you." From that day forward, Charlie would say he understood that fear had an actual smell because his house had been full of it, and now he can always tell if someone has it. Oh, my God.
Can I put in my resignation?
How about let's get to the end where Dennis is arrested and then yes?
Again, I genuinely, with all of my heart and soul and my butthole, hope hell is real.
Oh, yeah.
So this piece of shit can just... Oh, I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I pray heaven is real so those babies and Joe and Julie are resting in peace.
I know.
Together.
I know. And fortunately, after this happened, I do know we'll get more into the, years and years later, but in the immediate aftermath of this, one of Joe Otero's best friends from the military, who was all the way in New Mexico, actually came and gathered the kids and was like, you're gonna live with me, because they, I guess, knew him and he was a family friend, and he ended up adopting them and becoming their guardian. So they ended up being I know, but just that then feeling like, oh no, what happened to those poor sweet kids?
No, they were taken care of.
Someone who actually loved them and loved their dad and family came in and rose up, but God.
Eventually, police would learn that after he restrained the Otero family, Dennis Rader had made Josie and Joey watch as he strangled their parents to death. He'd then dragged Joey to the bedroom where he watched him suffocate. And finally, Dennis claimed that before he led Josie down into the basement, he asked her if her father kept a camera in the house.
Ugh.
She said no.
And that's why I have trained my children to tell adults to fuck off.
Exactly. He also claimed that she asked what was going to happen to her, and Dennis said she would soon be in heaven with the others.
Ugh.
And now I kind of wish heaven wasn't real so he could be wrong, because fuck you.
Yeah.
Then he placed a noose around her neck and pulled it just high enough that her toes were barely grazing the floor until she died. But just in case we forget to mention, Dennis really considers himself to be I need the biggest air quotes in history. Air quotes, a nice guy at heart.
He's a nice guy. He's just a nice guy. I mean, but listen to this next bit. He's a nice guy, Caitlin.
We need to collab with the red flag guy. You know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
So would a nice guy go on to, I don't know, after he tied up Joe Otero, he thought he looked uncomfortable. So he placed a pillow under his head.
Oh, it's so nice.
And at one point, Josie said she was thirsty. So he got her a glass of water and held it for her to drink.
Oh, it's so nice. Do you think that was before or after he made her watch as he strangled her parents to death?
Probably
I don't know.
after. She was probably parched.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, makes sense. That's so nice, though. It's nice.
He also admired how neat and clean the Oteros kept their home. He really valued cleanliness in people.
Oh, it's nice that he had that thought about them.
I wonder if they quoted him in Good Housekeeping.
I really hope so.
In all the grisly murders they'd investigated, this scene at 803 North Edgemore was more sinister and complex than anything they'd ever encountered. I just can't even. I genuinely cannot even.
When I was reading John Douglas's book about this case, he said that Wichita police were not rookies. Like, they saw a lot of... Wichita's a huge city, so this particular area, this like neighborhood cluster, was very low crime, very classic, like milk and cookies American. But as a whole, Wichita police dealt with a lot of like grisly murders, domestic violence, gang related, like all kinds of stuff. But they all said that there was a level of just like sadism and darkness to this that made them, like, genuinely haunted them, that they would just unbidden think about this case for years after, when they could go home and like go to sleep at night and not think about others.
I can see why he had to sit at his gravesite to do what he did.
Yeah.
Like,
to remind, look, John, you're not allowed to die yet. You gotta
get
catch
rid of
this motherfucker.
piece of shit.
Yeah.
A witness came forward who had seen the Otero station wagon backing out of the garage at around 10:30 a.m. And they had caught a glimpse of a driver they described as a short man with a Middle Eastern complexion.
It sounds a little racist, but if you Google pictures of Dennis Rader when he was young,
and he was like really hunched too and whatnot.
It kind of makes sense just because he has like a more olivey skin tone. Yeah. So you think about someone who, like, in the dead of winter in the Midwest, we're all pale as fuck.
That's true.
But someone who just naturally had that more like olivey complexion, even though, like, as far as I fucking know, he bitch, that's because I use self-tanner. But they weren't trying to be racist. I don't think they're just trying to be like, he doesn't look like one of us pale bitches. And I think that's accurate because Dennis Rader, like, he does have this more like, I don't like olivey look to his skin.
I mean, I get what you mean.
Yeah. He maybe also...
I mean, the neighbor wasn't straight up like it was a black man.
Right.
Like so many cases. So, I mean...
Honestly, though, he was trying to describe... he looked like he had a spray tan. He looked like one of us.
Dwuzzy.
Yeah.
And a different neighbor confirmed this sighting and added they'd been driving by in their own car as the man pulled out, and that he had been reversing out of the driveway so fast they'd had to slam on their brakes to avoid being plowed into.
Dennis, again, fucking idiot. Like, he could have just been caught right then.
Several hours later, police found the station wagon where Dennis Rader had left it in the parking lot of Dillon's Groceries. And a witness reported seeing a man get out of the car who looked visibly nervous and his whole body was shaking.
I hope he shit himself. I hope he shit himself,
sat in it, got an opened wound, and it festered.
And that his white Impala smelled like shit for the rest of its existence. And his OCD couldn't stand it.
At this point, all law enforcement knew was that they were after a killer with intense fantasies of dominance and control. No fingerprints were found at the scene, and his bodily fluid, insert gag noise, was sealed in a lab tube for when DNA analysis could catch up years later.
At least they thought to do that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, over 1,000 neighbors, co-workers, ex-convicts, and anyone with any connection to the Otero family was interviewed. Overnight, the quiet town of Wichita was shaken to its core by the knowledge that one of their homes had been invaded and terrorized, and any one of theirs could be next.
Oh, well, that's where we're gonna pause for this week. This might be a 3-parter. I don't know. We're gonna
Guys,
see.
There's a lot to this.
There is a lot to this, and I have been so deeply entrenched in BTK information for the last few weeks that I find it so fascinating, as we will get further into this, that someone of his level of evil could
was
be
able to be masked the way that it was. That's what
Yes.
gets me. The way that it was masked,
Yes.
and the way that he fucked up so many times too. And like, it's a long case.
even in that very first murder, there could have been so many things that went wrong, and there were things, and as we will go on to see, he comes so close to being caught, but he just gets fucking lucky. And eventually, the people that refuse to put down the bone, the dogs, the good dogs, get him. And speaking of dogs, I'm sorry, Lucky. R.I.P. I know you've been dead for like 50 years. I have beef with you. Why did you not tear this man's face off the second that little boy opened the door? You were supposed to be a Puerto Rican police dog. Get your shit together.
Not every German Shepherd comes as well packaged as Gilly.
I guess.
With loose screws.
I
get it, though. I get it.
I guess. But yeah, I just hate it when I hear that. Yeah.
This isn't on, like, again, I ain't ever going to do victim blaming.
No.
If somebody does something stupid, like, I'm going to say it. Anywho, not the point. Yeah, don't go to secondary locations. Don't allow somebody to tie you up and immobilize you.
Never, ever,
like, don't
ever.
agree to that stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's hard in situations.
Yeah.
But fight back when you can.
Also, I know that in my mind, Joe Otero, on a good day, he probably would have dove at Dennis fucking Rader, but he was hurt.
Just so happened.
Yep, he had that shoulder injury, the rib injury.
Off guard.
Yeah,
he had his children and wife to think about.
He very likely was like, I don't want to fight this man in front of my children, because what if the gun goes off and hits one of them? Like, in that
honestly,
moment,
he didn't shoot the dog. He's like, just put the dog outside for now. Like, I can see where you could be unarmed and just, like, trying to play it smart by playing along. Like, I totally understand that. And it's still...
It's no one's fault but fucking Dennis. And I hate him so much, as we will go on to get more into John Douglas, Kenneth Landwehr, and Carrie Rader. I say Carrie Rader, Carrie Rawson, but there's so much goodness that comes to the surface to, like, fight him, and that's why this is worth talking about.
Absolutely.
And why we want to, like, shine a light on the beautiful life this family had together before this person just decided that he was going to be horrible and evil. So... yeah, if you guys are interested in hearing more and you want to follow along, make sure you are subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts and leaving us those 5-star reviews wherever you get your podcast.
And on Spotify, again, I don't have, like, iTunes or whatever, but I know specifically on Spotify you can leave comments.
Yes.
Let us know what you guys think. Be nice, or I'll have to unleash on you.
Oh, yes.
Bitch.
What?
Who are we supposed to shout out? Sue?
Oh my goodness. We have a shout out we need to give. Yes, Sue.
Sue!
I heard about you from my husband, and I'm not going to throw out last names because there's weirdos out there, but thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
That means the world to us. It made me smile so big when I heard that you are listening. And yeah, Thanks, Sue. You are awesome.
We appreciate you.
I also have one more shout out to give, and this person will know who they are, but Northog, this is your shout out. You will only be allowed to listen to this 10 seconds of the podcast. But yeah, you know who you are, Northog. We love you.
Okay, guys. So catch us back next week.
Yeah, catch us back next week. And remember that the world is kind of a messed up place, so always remember to have courage and stay kind.
Of a bitch.
Bye.